Are negative Google reviews hurting your business? Don't let unfair feedback cost you customers. At Webamax, we specialize in removing false, misleading, and damaging reviews so your online reputation stays strong. Our expert team works quickly and legally to clean up your digital presence, helping you rebuild trust. Visit us on the web at www.gowebamax.com. That's GOWEBIMAX.com, or text us for a free quote at 856-840-8343. Don't let bad reviews define you. Get immediate help from Webamax.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the Shane Page. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can give me a follow on Twitter at Shane Haff NFL. This is a very special edition of On the Shane Page, and it is a very special edition because you guys are in for a treat. Johnny's not here. No, I'm just kidding. That's not it. But we are joined by a special guest, Brandon Lee Gowton, the editor-in-chief of Bleeding Green Nation. Brandon, how are you doing today?
Shane, glad to be here with you. I mean, I can't believe Johnny couldn't make it. It's only the Super Bowl. Eagles in the Super Bowl. I'm sure he, I don't want to actually besmirch him for what he has going on, but sad he is not here, but excited to talk about this game with you nonetheless.
Yeah, the thing is, Johnny was all ready for this show until I added the last question to the Google Doc, which was make a score prediction. And he was like, nope, I'm out, not doing it. So no, Johnny was planning to be here. He had something come up last minute and was unable to join us. So it's just going to be BLG and I. And we're going to run through a Super Bowl preview, some different matchups that favor the Eagles, that favor the Chiefs, kind of some game planning sort of things, and have a little bit of fun with Super Bowl traditions along the way. So shout out to everybody that is watching here live on YouTube or Twitter or Twitch or Facebook. Thank you guys for joining the show. Be sure and drop your comments and we can throw some of those up on the screen. But BLG, let's dive into it. I want you to give me, what do you think is one matchup that favors the Eagles in this game? As you look at both sides of the ball, what's the matchup that you're hanging your hat on the Eagles side?
Yeah, I think it's the matchup that the Eagles have going in their favor against literally any NFL opponent right now that could possibly be in front of them, which is Saquon Barkley. A guy who I famously came on the show as we did in the preseason, and thank God Johnny isn't here to, throw this in my face for my Saquon skepticism. Not that I thought he was going to be terrible, but just didn't think he was going to be anywhere close as this good. But yeah, I absolutely think if the Eagles win this game, it's going to need to be another huge Saquon game. That's their offensive identity. Obviously, in the championship game, they were able to pass more. And some of the times when teams have been able to take Saquon away, the passing game has opened up a bit. But, I mean, I just think that to beat such an inevitable player like Patrick Mahomes, you have one of your own in Saquon Barkley, who's been, again, just downright unstoppable right now. And I feel like you have to lean into that. And like I said, the Eagles have gone up against better run defenses than they have against the Chiefs this year. And they've been able to do it. And also, we clearly know by now it's not as simple as like, well, you just stack the box and you stop Saquon. No, that's not how it works, because, yeah, you might be able to generate some negative plays, might be able to slow him down for a stretch, but eventually it's going to break a big one and you really can't do anything about it. And then if you don't load the box, he's just probably going to, take like 6 yards, 7 yards as the Eagles march down the field on a big scoring drive. So it has to be Saquon.
Yeah. Can you imagine the atmosphere if Saquon just housed the first play of the game like he did it? Now, I guess it wouldn't be as good as at the Link in the NFC Championship game, but it would do a lot to alleviate my nerves if Saquon just rips off a 70-yard touchdown run on the opening play of the game, similar to what he did in the NFC Championship game. And you bring up good points about the Chiefs. The Chiefs' rushing defense is fine. Like, depending on what you want to look at, they're 10th by EPA, they're 12th by success rate, they're 8th by DVOA. But the Eagles' rushing attack's just on another level, and especially if you can threaten with Jalen Hurts in the running game too, which I'm sure, given the fact that they ran him a few times on designed runs in the NFC Championship game, you're 2 weeks later now, I would imagine there's no safeguards there. They're going to throw the whole book at the Chiefs in this one. So also we can keep an eye on the Terrell Davis record. Saquon only needs, I believe it's 30 yards to break his record for most rushing yards in a season. I think he only needs 2 yards to break his scrimmage yards record. So he's going to break both of those in the Super Bowl, barring something crazy happening. So the offense runs through Saquon. I went on the other side of the ball. My matchup that favors the Eagles, I said, is the Eagles pass rush against the Chiefs offensive line. And so I think it was week 15, the Chiefs kicked their left guard, Joe Thuney, out to left tackle. And it's had a huge negative impact on the offensive line. He was ranked first in interior offensive line pass block win rate, but they've kicked him out to left tackle where he's allowed a 10.3% pressure rate. The new left guard, Mike Caliendo, has allowed an 11.2% pressure rate. And it hasn't just impacted their passing attack. It's impacted their rushing attack. Their rushing success rate dropped 6%. The amount of runs where they're contacted behind the line of scrimmage has gone up 7%. And their stuff rate on runs between the tackles actually tripled from 6% to 18%. So it's had a big negative impact on the rushing attack. Overall, the interior offensive line as a unit has a 9% pressure rate since that shuffle, which is 4th worst in the league. And I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Jalen Carter, BLG, and Milton Williams, but they've combined for 21 pressures this postseason with 8 quick pressures. And that's before you even get to Nolan Smith, who you get his speed against Jawan Taylor at right tackle. And everybody knows about the Jawan Taylor getting an early start and the procedural penalties. And a lot of that is because he can be threatened with speed rushes. He has a hard time getting where he needs to be. And so I think that plays out well in the Eagles' favor in terms of how Nolan Smith rushes. And he's been on a heater, 13 pressures in 3 playoff games, which leads the league. He leads the Eagles in pressures since week 15. So on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, Mahomes is going to get his, but I do think that the Eagles defense can shut down this Chiefs rushing attack. And it just takes a few of those wins to really put the Chiefs in a bad position offensively. So
if the Chiefs are running the ball, that's like a favor to the Eagles. Like the Eagles will sign up for that. Please, Chiefs, run the ball all day long. I mean, that's just a gift anytime they literally hand the ball off instead of throw it. So yeah, but I like those call outs. I think Jalen Carter is going to be huge for this Eagles defensive performance in terms of like, if there's one player who could potentially have, who like could stop Mahomes, like it could kind of, or, you know, neutralize him, relatively speaking, it's Jalen Carter. Like, I think that's the answer to Patrick Mahomes, even though there aren't a lot of great answers to Patrick Mahomes. And then I like the Nolan Smith call out too. I mean, a guy Johnny has doubted, so I will take that moment here to rub that in his face, because he's right about many things, but had doubts about Nolan Smith. And 10.5 sacks in the last 15 games, 4 in the playoffs here. And you mentioned it just with the speed ability to get around Jawan Taylor. And then especially if he's able to do that like early in the game too, and then kind of like get in his head a little bit. And all of a sudden we're seeing like Jawan Taylor get hit with multiple false start penalties, or maybe like some illegal procedure, like, you know, he's illegally lined up a little bit too far off the ball like he tends to do, or at least has in the past. So I think that could be something like a gradual effect over the course of the game.
Yeah, if I was the Eagles, I might invent a new defensive line technique, like line Nolan Smith up at like a wide 10, like just put him at slot cornerback and send him flying off the edge upfield as far as he wants to go on the first play of the game against Jawan Taylor, and just put that in his head. But yeah, I think that's the matchup to watch Eagles wise. So let's flip it over to the Chiefs. Obviously there's some matchups. There's a lot of matchups I think that favor the Eagles. What's a matchup that you think favors the Chiefs in this game?
I don't think it favors the Chiefs, and then like it's this huge win for them, but I think it's such an important matchup, and I'll say it is the Jalen Carter thing we were just talking about. I think how the Chiefs defend him is really interesting because, you know, we haven't seen Vic Fangio really move Jalen Carter around a lot. You would think you'd want to put him over Mike Caliendo more than ever, at least. And they did move Carter around a little bit more in the championship game, I guess, than they have in the past. But that's still like a couple snaps, a few snaps, not too many. And Trey Smith's really good. And I don't think many offensive linemen, if any, can kind of just block Jalen Carter one-on-one the entire game. But if you're going to trust someone to do that, like maybe a little bit more than you usually would, I think it could be Trey Smith. And if you're not, obviously you have Humphrey and Smith, if those guys are doubling Jalen Carter, that leaves opportunities for Milton Williams 1-on-1, and I feel good about that. But if it's not the case, and again, if you're able to single block Jalen Carter and then you're able to double Milton Williams, then like I think you're in a tough spot there. So I think Trey Smith's really good, and I'm not expecting him to erase Jalen Carter, but I do think he stands more of a chance than a lot of players do, at least like of keeping him in check.
Yeah. See, so this has been a big debate that I've kind of thought through how I would want to handle that, and I do think, I mean, I would give him a few snaps over there, but I do kind of like him rushing against Trey Smith because I think it forces the conundrum of, are you going to help on Jalen Carter, or are you going to say, hey, we think our right guard can take Jalen Carter 1-on-1 and go help our weak link? And then you've generated 1-on-1s for Jalen Carter without having to do anything special. So there's some interesting cat and mouse games. I am curious to see how the Chiefs decide to approach handling Jalen Carter, because I mean, there's no doubt most teams have prioritized getting 4 hands on Carter, but if you do that, you're leaving Caliendo 1-on-1 with Milton Williams, and Milton Williams has been a monster this season.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, my matchup that I think favors the Chiefs, and it kind of plays into our next question here, but it's some of the blitz looks and some of the exotic pressures and things that Steve Spagnuolo is able to generate in the passing game. And Johnny and I, for our Patreons, did a all 22 rewatch of the AFC Championship game. And when we watched the Bills offense, it felt like they were like hyper concerned about these blitzes, and they didn't come very often. And I felt like it let them make their whole game plan vanilla. And then of course it comes at the end of the game and it ends the game. And so for me, it's that matchup, how the Eagles are able to combat that and deal with the blitz. It's something they've certainly been better at this season than they have been in the past. But it's still a concern. I mean, Jalen Hurts has an average time to throw of 2.85 seconds against the blitz this season, which is still the 5th longest in the NFL. And he's been sacked on 12% of his dropbacks against the blitz, which is the 2nd highest rate in the league. And when he gets a pass off, his EPA per dropback is like 6th highest. And so he's been good against the blitz while at the same time inviting pressure and taking negative plays. And it introduces a lot of variance that it's just not a good thing when you're the better team, as I think both of us would affirm. The Eagles are the better roster here. And so you don't want that variance. And so what is your level of concern about the Eagles passing game against those blitz packages from Steve Spagnuolo?
It's a big concern. It's not at the level of where the Eagles were at the end of the 2023 season, obviously, where they just had literally it's like they never had ever heard of a blitz before. And they're better than that. We all know that. But, you know, I had seen Sheil Kapadia put out earlier this week that Jalen Hurts has like the highest percentage of sacks against the blitz in the NFL of any quarterback this season. So, you know, sacks are obviously better than turning the ball over, which Jalen has been very good at not doing. But, you know, you're getting a lot of those negative plays where you're getting behind script. You're not able to run the ball as much in those situations, although Nick Sirianni kind of has an addiction to running it in long situations, which I don't always love. But in any case, I think it's a significant concern. And it's weird because, you know, Jalen had this awesome game against the Chiefs, obviously in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and the Eagles lost that game. And then he didn't really play that great against the Chiefs in Kansas City, and they won in that game. And the blitz was having more, you know, success against them in the last matchup, obviously, than the first matchup. I will say, for as much as I think it's a valid concern, just because Spags is really good in what he does, I do think, like, it's not just like blitzing is this like free thing that sometimes it gets talked about as like this automatic good thing to do at all times. Like, opportunities for the offense are going to open up, obviously, if that blitz doesn't get home. Now, again, I was watching the actually most recent Chiefs game against the Eagles, and there were some opportunities there with Jalen Hurts had on the ground because the Chiefs would blitz, and all of a sudden he's just running into a vacated space where no one is around him at all. So I do think, for as much as we talk about the variance, like you just said there, it can go poorly. I don't think enough people talk about like the upside that that represents for this Eagles offense and what they might be able to do against the blitz if it's not getting home or they're able to exploit it.
Yeah, I mean, even if you go back to the infamous blitz that ends the game, the 4th and 5 in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
You know, you have Khalil Shakir wide open in the flat, and you were never going to get to him without that being your start. But the sort of pressures that they run, by definition, mean that you're going to play unsound defense. And so if you can find the correct outlet, which is tough to do the way that he likes to rotate things, you can definitely generate some big plays off of that. And it becomes a pick your poison thing. Like if you're going to bring that kind of pressure, you either have to leave things wide open underneath, or you have to leave AJ Brown on an island. And I've got no problem if the Eagles want to take a one-step drop and just chuck a go ball to AJ Brown when they get those sort of looks, because I think he's going to bring down one of those. And then it makes the defense think a little bit. Now the defense is reacting to you. So I'm really interested to see how they attack that. I definitely want to see a deep shot or two early. I sound like Brian Johnson. Hey, they might blitz you, go long. But I do think you need to at least make them think about that. But let's give the options underneath as well. So had a comment over here that I'm trying to find now, and I can't find it. But I can't find the comment to put on the screen. But it was asking about Oren Burks. And how confident do you feel about Oren Burks against all of the motion and the things that Reed likes to do, specifically targeting like the middle of the field with Travis Kelce?
Yeah, I think that's valid as well. And if that's like, I was talking about my biggest matchup in favor of the Chiefs in terms of like magnitude and what I think is important. But if I look at just like, where the actual biggest weakness is maybe on the Eagles, it could be Oren Burks, who, fair to say, I would think that he's played like pretty well relative to what you would expect from a backup linebacker, your third linebacker. I mean, the Eagles have had way worse starting linebackers than Oren Burks has been as a backup linebacker. And for his flaws, he's been able to obviously do some really good things. Obviously, the special teams play, the Packers game, and then NFC Championship game, punching it out, having a sack against Jaden Daniels too. But there are opportunities, I think, for the Chiefs to get after him. That's what they did last year. He came in the game, and all of a sudden, the Chiefs were able to target him 9 times. He allowed 9 receptions for 67 yards and a touchdown in that game. Missed tackles have been a big issue for him in the last 3 playoff games here, which he didn't even, play the full of that amount because Nakobe Dean was starting in the Packers game. He has 7 missed tackles in those. That's been an issue for him. One of those he actually tackled, I think it was Zach Bond, right, in that Packers game. And the Packers had like a big gain on that. So I do worry about that. I do think that's a spot the Chiefs will certainly be looking to go after.
Does it count as a missed tackle if you miss tackling the ball carrier but tackle a defensive player? Does that count as a missed tackle? How do you chart that?
I think it does, but I mean, it's a fair question. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to throw a couple of game theory questions at you, I guess, here, and then we'll get into some more matchups. But some football genie appears and says, "Okay, BLG, I'm going to let you fast forward to 2 minutes left in the Super Bowl. We hit the 2-minute warning, and here's your options. The Eagles can either have the ball down 6 with 2 minutes left, or the Chiefs can have the ball down 6 with 2 minutes left. Which would you pick? Would you rather be on offense trying to go score the game-winning touchdown or on defense trying to protect the lead?"
I think it's a great premise of a question, because you're like, what you're really getting at is like, wouldn't you trust the defense more? Because the Eagles' defense has clearly been the best defense in the NFL, and they're really good. And they've, for as much as they've made it a little bit uncomfortable in some of these ending game spots, I mean, they mostly come through in them. Commanders game, Falcons game being some exceptions there. But a lot of the other ones, they came up big, just like they did against the Rams, like they did against the Jags, and so on and so forth. But I mean, I think anyone is insane if they're not saying that you want the Eagles to be down, because you cannot count on stopping Patrick Mahomes late in the game. Like, that is not something I'm not going to take my chances with that. I'll take my chances given the opportunity to maybe score a walk-off touchdown and have the clock hit 0 and Patrick Mahomes doesn't get the ball back and you just win the game right there. I will take my chances in that scenario over the scenario where Patrick Mahomes does he never come through in one of those? He has more than it's happened more often than never, but I feel like it's almost never, and I just don't want to put the ball in his hands at the end of the game.
Yeah, so I went back and looked at it just this season. The Eagles have been in those situations where they were down with the ball twice. In the Falcons game, it was down 1 with 34 seconds left and threw the interception. In the Saints game, it was down 5 with 1:58 left, and they drove and scored a touchdown to win. So they're 1 of 2. And then playing with the lead, they've been in that situation 7 times. and they've won 5 of those. But of the 5 that they won, they got a turnover on downs in the red zone against the Rams. They got to the red zone. The Panthers got to the 32-yard line. The Jags threw an interception in the end zone. The Packers, it was up 5 with 22 seconds left, but they gave up the 33-yard pass to get into Hail Mary range. And so it's been close for comfort, for sure. I think I saw it was Trey Wingo put out a stat that in the playoffs, when you are down by a touchdown or less with a minute to play, Mahomes is 7 of 7 in game-winning or tying drives in the final minute of playoff games. Tom Brady is 6 of 11, Drew Brees 3 of 6, Patrick Mahomes 7 of 7. So I'm with you. I would rather have the ball trying to go score a touchdown, which is an interesting proposition considering Hurts has only attempted 20 passes this season while trailing by more than a field goal in the fourth quarter. But I would rather be in those uncharted waters than the very charted waters of Mahomes' game-winning drives.
And even though I would say, we haven't seen extensive evidence of Jalen carrying the team with his arm. Certainly this year, that's been an issue. Like, is anyone really worried like the moment is too big for Jalen Hurts? Like, that's not a concern. Like, the mental makeup is there. Obviously, it's more just about the passing offense and being able to operate in that situation. But again, I will take my chances with that more than I will take my chances with 7 of 7 Mahomes. Although I guess you could argue he's due to regress at some point or get unlucky at some stage, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that.
Yeah, I saw something also on Mike there. I think they've won 17 consecutive 1-score games, and using the win probabilities in those, I think I saw it was like a 0.02% chance they would have won all 17 of those. So it's like, eventually, right? Eventually the coin has to come up heads, but it just hasn't yet. Anthony here with a good comment in the YouTube just wants to take the third option. Let's just take the ball and the lead and ice the game with Saquon. And I'm certainly on board with that. But here's a bonus question for you that I didn't send you because I just thought of it. Let's say Eagles down 7. It's 24-31. The Eagles drive down and score a touchdown with 4 seconds left. Are you kicking the field goal to go into overtime? Or are you going for 2 in the win?
You can't do that. I mean, you can't possibly. First of all, you don't want to extend the game and give Mahomes another chance. I know the new overtime rules. You get both teams get to possess the ball, right? Yeah.
As long as the first team doesn't score a touchdown.
Okay. Or wasn't it automatic? I thought it was no matter what now.
Oh, did they change that? I know they changed it to if the first team kicks a field goal, the other team gets a possession. Did they change it for the playoffs where both teams get one no matter what?
I think it might be no matter what. In any case,
okay.
Don't go to overtime. Don't find that out. Just you have to play to win in regulation. And also, like, Jake Elliott's not an automatic, thing at this point, even with extra points. So yeah, I mean, that has to be my whole thing with, and to a bigger point here, like, it's one of my biggest sticking points with Nick Sirianni for a long time is how he handled the 4th and 3 in the last Super Bowl, where the Chiefs had just gone on 2 long scoring drives, and you were putting more faith in your punter who's coming off IR and your quarterback, or your defense who was playing terribly, instead of your quarterback who was playing awesome. Even just disregarding the analytics for a second, which would say go for it. You don't beat Patrick Mahomes by kicking field goals and punting the ball. That's not how you do it. You have to go for broke. You have to go all out. I will die on the hill that in that game that the Chiefs played against the Bills where Mahomes scored in 13 seconds or whatever it was, 12 seconds a few years ago, I was of the mind, and I said this before that comeback happened, like, Sean McDermott should have went for 2 there to go up 4 because the Chiefs can get a field goal in 13 seconds or whatever. That is really not that impossible. They're probably not going to get a touchdown in that time. Like, you have to do everything you possibly can to win the game. You have to be super aggressive.
Yeah, you are right. I forgot the rules different for playoffs. Both teams get a possession regardless of the outcome of the first possession for playoffs only. So, but I'm with you. Like, in that scenario, I'm going for 2 in the win. Now, if it's like a 10-10 game that's a defensive struggle, I'd probably take that one to overtime. But in the game I expect, I definitely am going for that one in regulation. So, okay, let's get back to some game planning stuff here. So Kellen Moore calls you up on the phone. It's like, hey, BLG, I've been putting together my staff for the Saints job that I'm about to take, and I haven't really had time to game plan for the Super Bowl. So can you give me some bullet points? What do you think I should do to beat the Chiefs? How do you game plan against this defense?
I really think it's, leaning into what got them here. And that's not to say you want the passing game to be as ineffective as it was, but I really think it's just run the ball a lot. And where I don't like them being so turnover averse, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, the deep shots have to be in there somewhere. You saw it in the NFC Championship game. Now, obviously, I don't know if 4th and 5 is the most optimal spot to always do that, but those have to be built in. Those are game-changing kind of plays. And also, Jalen Hurts is really good at making those throws. A.J. Brown is really good at making those catches. And God forbid you have an interception there. You can live with an arm punt. That's not the end of the world. Like that's not the turnover they need to be like, we can't turn the ball over in that situation. Like that's not the turnover you have to absolutely can't live with. They have to take more shots. They don't have to do it all game long. They don't have to be like Brian Johnson, like you said, and bomb it downfield all day, but that has to be an element of their offense. I know that's not really for the Chiefs and that works for them, but with the Eagles, they just have the talent. It's too good for them to not mix that in there. And as you guys have talked about all season long, marrying the passing game and the running game, you would think that would actually go hand in hand. So I still think it's a lot of Saquon, especially in a game where there's no more games after this. You're not saving him. Run him 50 times for all I care. Obviously, that's not really practical, but run him as much as you possibly can until the Chiefs prove they can stop it. And it seems like it would be nice to kind of do some of the things they were doing in the championship game in terms of these easy throws, getting Hurts in a rhythm, getting him used to getting the ball out fast. Because like you said, with the blitz, they've had success against it. Hurts has obviously, been better at it than he was last year. But just intellectually, if you have this long time to throw on average, you're giving that blitz and the pressure and Chris Jones time to get home. And I would like to eliminate some of that.
Yeah, all I want to say is the Eagles average 55 points per game when Dallas Goedert gets 2 rushing attempts. So, they got to commit to the run to stay ahead of the sticks. In my opinion, you don't get into those situations where you're not going to win a lot of 3rd and longs here. And that's fine. Don't get there. They need to drill into Jalen's head. Don't take negative plays. A 2-yard check down on 1st down is a win because it gets you to 2nd and 8, and we can run the ball on 2nd and 8. We don't have to pass and get into these must pass looks. And then they need those answers to the blitz. You're not going to pick them up all the time. So they need to have those quick outlets. Take your shots to A.J. Brown one-on-one, especially. This is something I like. The Bills were going into 4-by-1 and isolating Keon Coleman on the backside. And Keon Coleman is not A.J. Brown, but it puts the Chiefs in a difficult situation of, are we going to leave Trent McDuffie on an island with a slot cornerback that's playing outside a lot now and doing pretty good at it, but are we going to leave him on an island with a really big receiver that excels downfield? Or are we going to give safety help? And now we've got massive numbers advantages on that 4 receiver side. So I would like to see him do that a lot. I would like to see him get into empty, because when you get empty, it spreads that defense out. It makes it so much easier to tell where pressure's coming from and force some vanilla looks defensively. And I think you can out execute those. And then, like you said, with Barkley, and this is the last game, so run him 50 times if that's what it takes. Same thing with Jalen Hurts. Use the quarterback in the running game, getting downhill, not read options to the edge. That's not going to work. But QB counter bash. The play, I call it follow the leader, but the play where they have Saquon go through the whole lead blocking for Jalen Hurts, those are a lot of the staple things I would be trying to do against the Chiefs. It's all predicated on don't allow these negative plays that the Chiefs are going to try to generate. So flipping over to the other side of the ball, Vic Fangio, I don't think he's going to go get a defense or a head coaching job somewhere. I think he's pretty happy where he's at, but he too, Brandon, just hears that you're just a defensive guru and he wants to float some ideas by you and see what you've got written down. So what would be your advice to Vic Fangio? What's your defensive game plan for beating this Chiefs offense?
I love Reed Blankenship, but don't have Reed Blankenship cover Travis Kelce one-on-one. I think would be a good start. And I don't think they will do that. I think that's kind of been an overrated talking point to me coming out of the championship game. How are they possibly going to cover Travis Kelce when, Reed Blankenship couldn't do that against Zach Ertz. I mean, like, Reed Blankenship's not had this horrendous year or anything. He's allowing like a 72.5 passer rating when targeted in coverage this season. And he also made a bunch of game-sealing interceptions. I think his stock is a little too low right now, coming off of a tough game for him. But I expect him to be better. I expect the Eagles to not use him in that same kind of situation in this game. And last season, when the Eagles had worse personnel and worse coaching, they limited Travis Kelce. I think he had something like 7 for 44 in that game in Kansas City. So, Travis Kelce's still really good. And then he hits a different gear in the playoffs still. And so much of what he does, I feel like I don't even know if you really can like do anything. It's like you're not scheming up against it because so much of it is like freelancing that he has this amazing connection with telepathically with Mahomes that like they're just going to make backyard plays out there. And you kind of just have to figure out how to survive that and just make a play in coverage, take advantage of a tip ball. They punched the ball out as they're very good against doing last year when they played the Chiefs. So not that, but I think it's all about Jalen Carter. I think Jalen Carter has the ability to wreck a game. Like we saw that against the Saints in the stadium, in the Superdome earlier this year, and playing the Saints is much different than the Chiefs, although that Saints offense was very red hot at the time. And certainly a lot better than what we've seen, the Chiefs offense be in terms of the statistics and stuff in that given moment. But Derek Carr is slightly different than Patrick Mahomes. But like just looking at the box score of that game, looking back at that, Jalen Carter has like 4 tackles, 0 sacks, 2 TFLs, pretty good, 2 pass deflections. That's a really good game. 1 quarterback hit. Like that's not the most impressive stat line you would ever see. But obviously, like when you watch that game, both live and on the replay, he was destroying their entire offense. They couldn't get anything going offensively. And, they also had backup offensive linemen in the game, injuries. So that was, you're not going to have the same situation against the Chiefs here. But I really, truly believe, like I said earlier, there's no good answer for stopping Patrick Mahomes because he's just inevitable. He's really good. He's unstoppable. He's not like particularly weak against any certain thing. I mean, relatively to others, not as good, but not like a true weakness. I think Jalen Carter could be the weakness. I think you have to like base your game plan around him trying to be able to wreck the game and disrupt Mahomes and force him into negative plays, force a turnover or two. I think it has to start and end with Jalen Carter.
Yeah. To your point on Travis Kelce, in the last 2 matchups between the Eagles and Chiefs, so regular season last year and the Super Bowl, Travis Kelce averaged 6.5 receptions for 62.5 yards. And he did have a touchdown in each game. But if you could tell me right now, Travis Kelce has 6 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown, sign me up for that. That's a good game. And I think you feel pretty good about that. And I think on the Ertz thing, like last week, the Commanders have Terry McLaurin, who's a guy that you're very concerned about. And the Chiefs just don't have that guy. I mean, Xavier Worthy's fast, but Xavier Worthy just hasn't been the impact player that Terry McLaurin has been. And he's a rookie, but they target him so shallow. His average depth of target since like week 14 is 4.8 yards. And you're going to have to rally and tackle the flats. Mahomes has 27% of his passes this season have been behind the line of scrimmage. And the Eagles have been really good defending that. They've allowed only a 29.9% success rate on passes behind the line of scrimmage, but the Chiefs are going to test that. They're going to test it with speed. They're going to stretch you out. And then they're going to throw those little RPO stick routes that they love to throw to Travis Kelce. And so I think it's a great game to run some of like those whip pressures that Fangio likes, where you blitz the linebacker and you drop out the edge rusher and he drops right inside of that. So I think you can see some things like that. Maybe you can get some of Jalix Hunt's coverage instincts involved in this game. Former safety playing edge rusher, you can get him bailing out a little bit. But the Chiefs play football in like the most difficult way possible offensively because it's run, short pass. Like most teams want to avoid third down. The Chiefs like live to get to 3rd and 5. Like that's their dream scenario. And then they just go execute. They've got the number 1 offensive success rate on 3rd and 4th down. The Eagles are going to have to win on 3rd downs. And it's interesting because this is the way the Eagles play too. The Eagles want to get you to 3rd and 5. The Chiefs want to get to 3rd and 5. And we saw early in the NFC Championship game, Washington goes on this 18-play drive where they convert 3rd and 6, 3rd and 6, 4th and 5, 4th and 2, and it's really frustrating. And I was saying during that game, like, that won't hold. They can't continue to do that all game. The Chiefs can do that all game. And so you're going to, they want to do that. And so you're going to have to force that issue and be able to get off the field and then really keep Mahomes, hemmed in because he's going to scramble a lot more in the playoffs. We've seen it over the course of his career, and especially last week, his scramble rate goes up. And so you emphasize that rush lane integrity. But I do think the Eagles benefit a bit that they just played a light version of the Chiefs in the NFC Championship game. They played a quarterback that's got a lot of scrambling ability where they had to worry about that. They had a speed receiver, a tight end that's a top target. Like a lot of the things, a really RPO heavy attack, like a lot of the things the Commanders do, the Chiefs do too. They just do it better. And so the Eagles get the benefit of coming off of this scout team that they played in the NFC Championship game. No disrespect to Commanders fans. You guys had a great season. The Chiefs don't have that. The Bills are nothing like the Eagles. And so I do think there's a bit of an advantage there for that in the Eagles. So anything else you want to mention on game planning stuff before we move into some more nonsense stuff, I guess we could say?
Yeah, I know the Chiefs want to do that, but also I still think that's a good way for the Eagles to live, depending on the situation. Like the big thing, with Gannon in the last Super Bowl was that towards the end of the game, you didn't want to live in that world because time was more of the essence. And it's if you're gonna lose, you have to lose quicker than that. Time matters. So maybe be more aggressive here and either get that negative play or give up the big play and get the ball back. So obviously context dependent, but I do think ultimately it's a good thing if the Chiefs are living in that world against the Eagles. I know they can do it better than other teams do, but still you're with more plays in the game. That would generally, you would think, favor the better team, which would be the Eagles, that a lot of us consider more talent. And also, you're increasing the chances, you would think, of there being a mistake, of that maybe Jawan Taylor false start or whatever, and the Chiefs getting knocked back a bit. Some crucial drops. That was a huge element of the Eagles winning when they won in Kansas City last year. And something, I think they still kind of struggle with. So, yeah, I still think that's a valid strategy, even though it is kind of funny. They both want to go up against each other that way.
Yeah, the Chiefs can't survive being behind the sticks. They just can't. If you get that sack, you get that false start or that holding penalty, that really handicaps this offense. I looked this one up. So we know you don't want the Eagles in 3rd and long. We know that, right? So I looked up on the season, 3rd and 8 or more yards. What do you think the Eagles, I'll tell you the Eagles' success rate passing the football, and then I'll let you guess the Chiefs. So 3rd and 8 or more this season, the Eagles rank 18th in the NFL with a 32.1% passing success rate. Where do you think the Chiefs are at?
And you said it's worse?
No, I didn't say.
Oh. Well, but the context of what you're saying, you said I'm overthinking this way too much. Is it first or last?
It's 17th at 32.3.
Oh.
So their passing success rate is basically identical to the Eagles on 3rd and 8 or more. And so as Eagles fans, we know man, you get into 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, that's a death sentence for this offense. As bad as you feel about that, the Chiefs are the exact same team when you get into 3rd and long situations. And so if you can force that, it's a huge advantage for this defense. So, okay.
They should do it.
They should do it. All right, BLG. The people want to know Super Bowl traditions. How are you going to watch the Super Bowl? For anything from where you're going to watch it. Do you do the Super Bowl party? Food choices? Just lay out the Super Bowl spread here for me.
Yeah, I want to hear what you're doing afterwards. I don't know the answer to that either. But for me, I'm keeping it pretty simple. I was in the game. I was in Minnesota for the game. When the Eagles won that. I was not there for Arizona, so sorry. If me being there is the key to victory for the Eagles. But
we'll find out.
We will see. I'm going to my friend's house nearby, and it's pretty simple. I think we're gonna have 7 or 8 people. Get a couple pizzas from a local shop. Watching the game in the living room. It's a very it's a diehards only kind of thing. No casual energy, not mean about it. Just everyone actually truly cares. I mean, they might not be able to talk about the level like you and Johnny, but everyone knows who the players are. We're not asking like, we understand you got to go for it on fourth down. It's a very, it's not casual. So I'm looking forward to that. And then if they win, I'll be going out to Broad Street to take pictures and videos, post those on my social media channels, I guess, and also bleedingreenation.com. And if they lose, I really don't want to think about what that looks like. So I'm not even going to bring it up. But what are you doing, Shane?
Yeah, I'm going to watch it at home. There, of course, being in Oklahoma, there's not exactly like Eagles watch parties and things around. Not that I would probably go to them if there were, because I kind of watch games in the most stressful way possible because like I have the game on the TV. I also have it on my phone on like a 10-second delay so I can record clips to tweet out as the game goes along, while also like trying to take notes for post-game show. If I wasn't doing post-game shows like immediately after games, it would make it a lot more chill experience. But so I'm going to watch it at home. My mother-in-law and father-in-law live in town with us. They're going to come over and watch the game. And then there's one family from our church that's going to come watch it with us because they've kind of gotten into football, and they've got a son that's around my son's age that they're real good buddies. So he'll enjoy watching with his buddy. And I'm good friends with the dad, but he's not real chatty. So I won't have to worry about like engaging in conversation that's not
Right.
during commercial breaks. So that's the thing for me this time around. We're going to we'll do the post-game show right after. The last time when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, I was actually a youth pastor at the time, and we had already scheduled like a Super Bowl watch party at the church. Like months in advance, and then the Eagles made it, and I was like, can I call in sick? Like, I do not want to watch this game with a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
But they won that one, so it's like I gotta have a few people. But and then like the ideal food is wings, right? But you got to eat those before kickoff because otherwise your hands are messy and it just doesn't work. So I'm gonna smoke a pulled pork shoulder for some nachos. My mother-in-law is gonna make some sausage balls. Those are the best.
Sounds awesome.
Hopefully we're going to enjoy an Eagles Super Bowl win.
I have a superstition with the wings because I've had wings twice ever during Eagles Super Bowls, and those were both during the losses in 2004 and the last one. So I am really trying to personally avoid. I don't know if there will be wings at this thing. It's not just up to me, what the food is doing. I know we're going to have pizza. I don't know if we're going to have wings. I will not have a wing. I can't do it. I feel like there's bad juju with, no pun intended, with the Eagles, being birds and wings. I can't do it personally.
Yeah, definitely don't eat the wings, BLG. I speak for all of us, but yeah, I smoked some pulled pork nachos like a week ago for a game night, and that was the trial run for the Super Bowl. So we're gonna have the pork ready. It'll be a good time, and that brings me to our final question, BLG, the one that made Johnny dodge the show.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave the show now. I can't do this.
No. I need your Super Bowl prediction. And give me your Super Bowl MVP pick.
I'm really not a popular person in Philadelphia this week with my prediction for this game. Because people are like, how could you possibly pick the Chiefs? But let me tell you why I'm going to pick the Chiefs. I've been saying since the Chiefs won Super Bowl 58, and I've been saying it consistently through this season, like, I don't care how bad the Chiefs look. You can bring up the stat like you did of one-score game and everything. And typically, with most teams, I would agree, just like it held true for the 2023 Eagles when they were winning all these one-score games, and eventually the bottom drops out. For most teams, that is true. The Chiefs are the exception to that. They're a team that's won the Super Bowl twice in a row. Patrick Mahomes will always come through, as you just highlighted, in the playoffs especially. That never hasn't, really, in a big spot. I really just need to see it before I can believe it, that the Chiefs are actually going to lose. The analogy I keep using is it's just like, I feel like I would be Charlie Brown running at the football that Lucy is holding down to say, the Chiefs are going to lose this time. For real, though. Actually, no, trust me, it's going to happen. That is tough to pick because I want to be clear. What I'm not saying when I say that is that, like, I doubt the Eagles and they can't win. That's not what I'm saying. You can't clip that. I mean, although
that's the promo clip, BLG.
Yeah. And that's not like my mindset. At least you can clip it or whatever, and take it out of context. But that's not.
I would 100% do that to Johnny. I would never do it to you.
That's fair. I mean, it would be really probably good engagement. People would probably be responding to that. But that's not my mindset. It's just about, I would have said this about the Chiefs no matter who they played. Honestly, that's been my stance the entire season. So I feel like it wouldn't be very like authentic of me to just change it because I want to be wrong and I want the outcome to be different. And the Eagles are here. Like that's not really what I can do to change the calculus. I feel like I will say the two things that make me really doubt myself are Vic Fangio being awesome. And also, for as much as I say Patrick Mahomes is inevitable, I think Saquon Barkley's kind of inevitable right now. Now, obviously, it's quarterback versus a running back. Those things being inevitable are not quite the same. But I do think I just need to see the Chiefs lose to fully believe it. I think they've been locked in on this three-peat thing. And it's just like people want to say before the game, like, these are a better team. Like, I agree. But guess what? I don't think that matters. I think a lot of people were saying that before the Bills game in the AFC Championship game. And guess how that game ended? Guess how every Chiefs game ended this season other than when they didn't try to win in Week 18 and then they lost to Buffalo at home earlier in the season. Like, which still came down. That was a close game, at the end. And the Chiefs, they went for it on fourth down or whatever. Josh Allen has that big run. Like, it can be done. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying I'm not going to be the one to sit here and be like, well, I was a fool for doubting the Chiefs once again. I can't do that. I can't possibly do that. So I hope the Eagles win. And if I'm wrong, everyone can feel free to throw it in my face for as long as you want to. But until I see it, I have to take the Chiefs in a close game. I'm going to say Chiefs win by a final score of 26-23.
26-3. All right. If the Eagles win, who do you think is named Super Bowl MVP?
Yeah, I didn't even say my Chiefs one, but obviously Mahomes. I'm going to take him.
Yeah, it's always the quarterback, except with the Eagles, it might not be. I think that's where it gets interesting.
I think it's, I think Saquon's literally the betting favorite, and I think there's so much of a narrative there that I think, he has a really good chance to do that, and he's just, again, fantastic. And if the Eagles win, I think he'll be a big part of that. So I would say he's the favorite, but I'll say my favorite value pick in terms of like who has the best odds relative to like the bet you could make on them. I think it's Zach Bond because he's fourth behind Saquon, Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Carter. And I think Jalen Carter has the ability to wreck the game, but like I just said earlier with that Saints box score, like the box score might not truly reflect that. And with some of the way some of these voters might vote, like they might go a little bit more traditional box score. And Zach Bond can fill up a box score. Like, he has no trouble doing that week in and week out and making really big plays. And also there's the narrative element too of him like coming back to New Orleans and doing this, evolving into a player no one could have seen coming. So I think Zach Bond actually has a really good case as well relative to the odds. But to answer your question in a long-winded way, I'll say Saquon is, the most likely Eagles Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, I have the Eagles 28-24. That's it. I'm picking the Chiefs to lose a one-score game, which feels insane. But and I have Saquon for the MVP. But if I was going to pick a long shot MVP, Dallas Goedert plus 12,000. I think Goedert could be a huge part of this game. He's really come on strong the last few weeks. Ultimately, the really tough part with picking any receiving player is that Hurts is going to have all the stats that they have, but
the Goddard runs.
There you go. The Goddard 55 points a game when Goddard gets 2 or more carries. Let's go. So one last question I want to throw out here, because T Grant asked it a couple of times, asking what your thoughts are on Nakobe Dean. If you've come around on him a little bit, or just kind of in general, what you think about Nakobe Dean.
Yeah, I think I was way wrong about Nakobe Dean. I just saw struggles in coverage that I thought were going to be there. And I think he's, evolved beyond those. And I think wasn't evaluating enough. And I was saying back in the summer, he is incredibly good going downhill. I had no doubts about that part. I was just wondering, how he could operate dropping back into coverage. And I think the Eagles, Vic Fangio, they've kind of played up to his strengths ultimately. But I mean, the sad part is obviously we don't know what Nakobe Dean is going to be moving forward, unfortunately, with this injury and just the availability questions that have, been piling up throughout his career. So incredibly sad injury for him. I will say one last thing, I have a couple final thoughts for you, if you'll entertain me.
Absolutely.
I like the Goddard pick in part because do you know which team has allowed the most receiving yards to tight ends this year?
It's the Chiefs.
It's the Chiefs. So they've had struggles against the tight end. And Goddard's been awesome. It's kind of weird because I think we all kind of just wrote him off because he continues to get hurt, hasn't been like that player exactly who you've wanted him to be. Contract situation could be coming to a point where maybe the Eagles move on after this season. Been awesome in the playoffs. He's caught 15 of his 18 targets. He's been incredibly efficient. He had that awesome, stiff arm touchdown in the Packers game. He had the runs and like we've talked about in the championship game. He's been great. And he also had a good Super Bowl against the Chiefs the last time they played. And I would not be shocked if he had another good game here. My final point on this game is that for as much as it kind of maybe wouldn't make sense for someone to be picking the Chiefs to say, I think there's like an under-discussed possibility the Eagles could kind of blow out this team. And I think that's like, this makes sense. Like, yeah, blow out the other team. That's obviously the best path to victory. But I think that's kind of their formula. And that's why I am stressing, like, they need to play from ahead. And Nick Sirianni needs to be aggressive. Because I think if you can kind of jump on this team, I think you playing with that lead and that game script is huge. And you're taking out any kind of weird, late close Mahomes magic. Very much easier said than done because that just does not happen against Mahomes. He rarely gets blown out, although we did see it in the Super Bowl before. I don't really know how you can emphasize blowing the opponent out. I'm sure you try to do that always, but I think it's more possible. I feel better about the Eagles winning in a blowout than I do them winning in a close game. I guess that's how I'd put it.
Yeah. I tweeted this Dallas Goedert stat this morning, and I'm hoping you haven't seen it yet because I want to spring this on you. But this season, Jalen Hurts has targeted Dallas Goedert 14 times on third downs. He's completed 13 of those 14 passes with 8 first downs. And if you look at win probability models, those 14 targets have resulted in a combined 106% win probability added, the most of any quarterback and pass catcher duo. How much win probability do you think the Eagles have added on targets to all other pass catchers combined this season?
What was Goddard's again?
106%.
I think one of those was in that Saints game.
It was,
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, which is a huge play. One of the biggest plays of the season, really. I will say 55%.
15%.
Okay, a lot lower.
Yeah, Dallas Goedert is a third down merchant, apparently. He also averages 2.2 yards per route from 11 personnel this season, which is second among all qualifying tight ends. So I think there's a pathway to Goddard having a big game. It would be tough for a pass catcher to win an MVP though. But anyways, I feel, there's this other comment I flagged I was going to throw up here said that he doesn't care what Brandon thinks as long as he doesn't eat wings during the games.
I will not eat wings. I promise you that.
So that's it. That's the thing. We're about to find out if it's the wing thing, if it's the being at the Super Bowl thing,
That's
because
right.
If the Eagles lose this Super Bowl, it clearly doesn't have anything to do with wings. It has to do with you being at the game, and we need to rally around getting you to all the games. And
That's
if they
right.
win, then we know you don't need to go to the games anymore. You just can't eat wings.
There we go. We will learn something either way. That's
science.
It's the most important part of whatever happens on Sunday.
All right. Well, BLG, thank you once again for joining us for the preview. Always love having you on the show. We'll have to get you on here with Johnny again in the off season. I'm sure we can collaborate on some stuff. But before we get out of here, just want to give you a chance to shout out the website, your social medias, give any final thoughts, whatever you want to do, man. The floor is yours.
BleedingGreenNation.com is where you can check out my written work. I'm on social media, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, just, Brandon Lee Gowton, I think, on Blue Sky. So unfortunately not consistent all the way through, but whatever. Search my last name, Gowton. Yeah. And also check, subscribe to Shane and Johnny here. Obviously you are if you're listening to this, but somehow if you're listening to this because I retweeted it or something and you're not, check them out, support them on Patreon. We obviously miss working with you guys, with BGN Radio, miss BGN Radio point blank. But really glad to have you guys still doing this. Obviously I listen to the show every week and learn a lot, as I'm sure a lot of the listeners do. So looking forward to this Sunday and then looking forward to hopefully what will be a really nice Eagles film review breakdown of a Super Bowl win against the Chiefs here on the Shane Page podcast.
Absolutely. Well, Brandon, thanks for coming on. Always a pleasure to speak with you. And, thanks for the support you've always shown for Johnny and I know definitely helped me get started in all this. So really appreciate that. I hope you enjoy the game. And like you said, I hope we're all writing and blogging and making video breakdowns of an Eagles Super Bowl victory. So that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys for joining along, for listening later on audio platforms. Make sure you subscribe to the Eagles Pinpool Network. We'll have lots of coverage coming your way in the lead up to the Super Bowl, post-game show, and then, of course, all the off-season stuff. Make sure you're following Brandon at Brandon Gowton on Twitter, and the Blue Sky handle's not on the screen, and I don't remember what it was, but go check him out there too. Obviously, check out his written work at Bleeding Green Nation. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHalfNFL. We'll catch you guys next time on another episode of On the Shane Page, hopefully with Johnny Page. Go Birds.